So imagine you leave your phone on a coffee shop table for like 10 seconds.
Right, which we all do, constantly.
Exactly. You turn around to grab your latte, and a stranger walks by. They just casually hold their own phone at a slight angle and snap a high-resolution photo of the greasy smudges left on your screen.
It takes less than a second.
Less than a second. But in that fraction of a second, they haven't just taken a picture. They've actually lifted a perfect map of your fingerprint, which they can then digitally enhance and 3D print to just, unlock your entire digital life.
Yeah, the industry actually calls that a screen spoof. And it perfectly illustrates, I think, the central flaw in how we think about modern security today.
Because we think we're safe.
Right. We've operated under this comforting assumption that because our physical traits, so our fingerprints, our irises, our voices, are biologically tethered to us, they are inherently secure. But the barrier between physical biology and digital vulnerability has completely collapsed.
Which is terrifying, because we are blindly rushing into a passwordless society right now. So today, we are going on a massive deep dive into the realities of biometric theft and the huge infrastructure that is currently under attack.
It is a massive, invisible battleground.
It really is. And for those of you listening who actually want to understand the hidden mechanics of the world, specifically how the systems designed to keep you safe are being dismantled, we are stripping away the buzzwords today.
Yeah, we are going to look at the raw mechanics of identity compromise. And to do that, we are bringing in a pretty incredible stack of sources.
Let's outline those sources really quick. First, we have an extensive observatory report from the Europol Innovation Lab.
Which is fascinating.
Oh, it's a goldmine. It focuses purely on biometric vulnerabilities, like how the hardware and the mathematical models are failing. And alongside that, we're looking at a series of cybersecurity threat intelligence reports from Sentinel.
And we're supplementing that Sentinel data with forensics from the Straits Times and the Hacker News as well.
Right. And that cybersecurity report isn't theoretical. It details a massive multi-nation cyber espionage campaign that systematically gutted the servers of Pakistani law enforcement agencies.
Which perfectly aligns with our mission for this deep dive. Our goal today is to understand not just the methods of these attacks, so going from physical fingerprint spoofs to digital malware implants, but why these specific systems have become the most high-value targets for both local criminals and nation-state actors.
Oh, yeah. And before we jump into the technical weeds, I do want to make a really quick but clear impartiality disclaimer for you listening. The sources we're pulling from today touch on some incredibly complex geopolitical tensions involving China, India, and Pakistan.
Highly sensitive stuff.
Very. And our goal here is not to play politician or debate regional conflicts. We aren't taking any political sides. We are strictly analyzing the digital forensics, the malware signatures, and the victimology profiles as reported by these cybersecurity firms.
We just follow the code. The malware tells the story.
Exactly. So let's start at the foundation, right? The biometric baseline. Are you who you say you are?
The ultimate question.
The Europol report makes a really hard distinction right out of the gate between biometric identification and biometric verification.
Yes, and that distinction is crucial. Mathematically, it's the difference between a one-to-n search and a one-to-one comparison.
Okay, let's unpack that. 1 to n is like, say, searching a crime scene fingerprint against an entire national database to find who left it. Right.
Exactly. And from a computing standpoint, searching a database of, say, 50 million faces in real time to figure out who someone is takes massive, massive processing power.
Right, because I always wonder, how do these systems not just instantly bottleneck and crash when trying to identify someone at a busy border crossing? Like scrolling through millions of photos.
Well, they avoid crashing because they aren't actually comparing images. The system doesn't look at a JPEG of your face and scroll through 50 million other JPEGs.
Oh.
No, it relies on a highly optimized process called feature extraction. So let's say a raw sample is captured. Say a fingerprint lifted from that crime scene you mentioned.
Right.
That serves as our biometric probe. The signal processing subsystem takes that image, segments it, and strips away all the background noise. It's looking for specific, quantifiable minutia.
Minutia meaning like the little ridges and loops.
Exactly. In a fingerprint, it means plotting the exact geometric coordinates of ridge endings and bifurcations.
So it's literally translating biology into geometry.
That's a great way to put it. It creates a mathematical vector, which we call a biometric template. So in that 1 to n identification scenario, the database is already indexed based on these vector coordinates.
Got it.
When the probe template is introduced, the comparison subsystem uses algorithms to calculate what's called the Euclidean distance between the probe vector and the millions of stored reference vectors.
Euclidean distance. So it's basically searching for geometric proximity in a high-dimensional space.
Yes. And it returns a ranked list of candidates with similarity scores rather than a definitive, like, this is absolutely the person.
Okay, that makes total sense for a massive dragnet. But biometric verification, the one-to-one process, is what you and I use constantly, right?
Every single day.
Yeah, like unlocking a phone, logging into a banking app, or scanning a passport at an e-gate at the airport. In those cases, I'm handing the system an identity claim like my passport and saying, I am this specific person.
And in that one-to-one scenario, the computational load is microscopic by comparison.
Because it's not searching millions of records.
Right. The system extracts the live template from your face at the camera, pulls the specific reference template stored on the little RFID chip inside your passport, and it literally just measures the distance between those two specific vectors.
And if they match up close enough.
If the similarity score crosses a predefined mathematical threshold, the decision subsystem registers a match.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because I used to think of this like a highly exclusive nightclub bouncer. Like the biometric sensor is the bouncer and my face is the VIP pass.
Right.
And I thought, isn't this system inherently more secure than a password that can just be guessed? But that bouncer analogy kind of falls apart when you look at the math, doesn't it?
It completely falls apart. It's actually much more like turning a melody into sheet music.
Could tell me more about that.
The scanner isn't storing the actual audio of your voice or a picture of your face. It's storing the sheet music, the mathematical representation. And the comparison subsystem is just checking if the live performance at the microphone matches the notes written on the page.
Wow. Okay, that makes so much sense. And the volume of this sheet music being generated right now is staggering. The Europol report points to these massive, interconnected European databases.
Oh, the scale is unbelievable. The Schengen Information System is already a behemoth, but Europol highlights the upcoming entry-exit system, or the EES, and the Prum 2 regulation. Yeah, it drastically expands automated data exchange for police cooperation across all of Europe. We are talking about centralizing hundreds of millions of highly sensitive biometric templates.
And the private sector is doing the exact same thing for us.
Absolutely.
Like you think about know your customer banking regulations, the KYC stuff, they require fintech apps to do live selfie checks against state IDs. Or, Amazon is rolling out Palm Scanner so you can pay for groceries at Whole Foods with your hand.
Right.
But, and this is the scary part, if the system is just verifying the mathematical notes on a page, hackers don't actually need to break into the database to alter the sheet music, do they?
Not at all. They just need to forge the live performance at the microphone.
Right, tricking the bouncer directly at the door.
Exactly. Which brings us to the sensor level and what the industry classifies as presentation attacks.
Presentation attacks.
Yeah.
So you are basically presenting a fake to the camera.
Yes. You are presenting an artificial or modified artifact, which they call a presentation attack instrument, or PAI, directly to the scanner. And the engineering going into these artifacts has evolved way past simple parlor tricks.
Yeah, the Europol report goes deep into the art of the spoof, and it is wild. Let's go back to that screen spoof method we talked about at the start.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Because to actually execute that, an attacker needs a remarkably high-fidelity 3D model. Are the optics on a standard consumer smartphone camera really good enough to capture the required focal depth and ridge detail from just a smudge on a piece of glass?
They absolutely are, especially if the lighting provides enough contrast against the OLED panel of the phone. But, the physical capture is just phase one.
Right. What do they do with the photo?
The attacker takes that 2D image and runs it through a neural network designed to estimate depth maps. It essentially extrapolates the 3D geometry of your finger based purely on the shadowing of the smudge.
That is insane.
And then they invert that digital model and feed it into a high-resolution resin 3D printer.
So they're printing a negative mold of your finger.
Yes. They print the mold, fill it with liquid silicone or like EcoFlex, and within an hour, they have a wearable prosthetic fingertip that contains your exact ridge bifurcations.
And it actually fools the scanner.
Completely. To the capacitive sensor on a laptop or a banking terminal, the electrical conductivity of the silicone, which they sometimes dope with graphite powder to make it conductive registers as human skin, it perfectly performs your sheet music.
Man. And it doesn't stop at fingerprints. Obviously, the face is the most exposed biometric we have. I mean, we voluntarily upload terabytes of high-res training data of our own faces to social media every single day.
We make their jobs very easy.
We really do.
Mm.
And the report outlines everything from hyper-realistic silicone masks to makeup techniques. But the one that really stood out to me was face morphing.
Face morphing is fascinating.
Because it's an attack on the foundational identity document itself. How does that work?
So face morphing exploits a vulnerability in the enrollment phase.
Like when you apply for a passport.
Exactly. An attacker takes a photograph of person A, who is a legitimate citizen with a totally clean record, and a photo of person B, who is a criminal or someone on a watch list.
Okay.
They use software to map the facial landmarks of both photos, so the corners of the eyes, the tip of the nose, the jawline, and they mathematically blend the two images pixel by pixel.
So the resulting photograph looks like a completely new, hypothetical human being.
To a human, yes. It looks like a slightly weird blend, but the underlying vector math is what actually matters here.
Right, the geometry.
That's the core vulnerability. The blended image contains enough geometric similarity to both original faces. So person A submits this morphed photo when applying for a passport. A human clerk looks at it, thinks, yeah, it looks close enough to person A, and issues the legitimate document.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going.
Yep. Now that physical passport contains a digital reference template on its chip that will mathematically cross the matching threshold for person B as well.
That's incredible.
So person B can take that perfectly legitimate passport, walk up to an automated e-gate at an airport, look into the camera, and the one-to-one verification system will let them right through.
Because the math matches.
Yeah.
Two different people, one shared identity document.
Exactly. And they don't even have to use deepfakes at the sensor for that one.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. If someone steals my password, I just change it.
Right.
But if someone 3D prints my fingerprint using a photo of my phone, I can't exactly grow a new finger.
No, you cannot.
So what does this all mean for the future of security? How do we actually defend against this?
Well, Europol heavily emphasizes presentation attack detection, or PA.
Right. Liveness detection,
Yeah.
checking if it's a real, breathing human.
Exactly. Hardware PATE uses things like infrared to detect body heat or 3D structured light to ensure the face isn't just a flat screen. Software PAE algorithms look for micromovements or changes in skin texture or the unnatural pixelation of a screen replay.
But even liveness detection is starting to feel like a Band-Aid, isn't it? Like, if I'm a sophisticated attacker, I don't even bother holding an iPad up to a camera to show a deepfake. I just use a virtual camera at the operating system level.
You've hit on a massive architectural weakness right there.
Right, because if the malware sits between the camera hardware and the application, a pulse check or a blood flow scan doesn't even matter. The app is just receiving a spoofed data stream.
Exactly. If the attacker compromises the system architecture and injects the video stream directly into the camera bus, they bypass the physical lens entirely. The liveness detection is analyzing a mathematically perfect, artificially generated stream.
So the system is vigorously verifying a ghost.
It is, and this is why the ISO standards framework categorizes these attacks based on intent. You have the active imposter attack, where the goal is to impersonate someone else to gain access.
Right, pretending to be me to get into my bank account.
Yes. But then you have the identity concealer attack.
Ah, right. The concealer isn't trying to be me.
Yeah.
They are just trying not to be them.
Exactly. And Europol mentions some wild methods for this. For example, criminals using highly textured contact lenses.
I saw that.
Yeah, they print a high-resolution artificial iris pattern on the lens, and it completely obscures their natural iris beneath it. So when the border scanner hits the eye, it extracts a random garbage template that doesn't match the criminal's real record on the watch list.
That is so smart. But it also highlights this brutal systemic asymmetry we face. Because, again, biometrics are immutable. If your iris pattern or your vocal frequency model is compromised and floating around the dark web, you are permanently vulnerable across any platform that uses that specific trait.
It's permanent, which means we really cannot rely on the physical sensor as the only line of defense. The back-end databases themselves have to be bulletproof.
And Europol warns about a massive threat within the system itself that has nothing to do with hackers breaking in. we need to talk about algorithmic bias and data at rest.
Yes. The discussion around bias in these systems often gets mischaracterized as just a social issue, but mathematically it is a severe security vulnerability.
How so?
Well, a biometric algorithm doesn't inherently know what a human face looks like. It builds a dimensional vector space based entirely on the training data it is fed by the developers.
Okay.
If that data set is heavily skewed toward a specific demographic, say overwhelmingly lighter-skinned individuals, the algorithm becomes overfitted to those specific facial geometries and skin reflectances.
So when it encounters someone from an underrepresented demographic, what happens? The vector plotting just fails.
Pretty much. The system clusters the data incorrectly. The error rates skyrocket. False acceptance rates and false rejection rates diverge wildly, depending purely on the user's ethnicity or gender.
Wow.
Yeah, for example, if a near-infrared camera is calibrated primarily for high-reflectance skin tones, it simply won't capture the necessary topographical data from a darker skin tone to generate a secure template.
So it's not just a usability issue where it's annoying for the user. It means the system is structurally weaker and easier to spoof for certain demographics.
Exactly. It's a massive security gap.
But fixing that requires massive, highly diverse data sets to train the AI, right?
Yes, which leads to the next huge problem.
Right. Because building those data sets creates the ultimate honeypot. You are centralizing the immutable biological data of millions of people. And Europol specifically warns about the domino effect of data at rest vulnerabilities.
The domino effect is a great way to visualize it.
Because, think about it, say my local 24-hour gym uses a fingerprint scanner to open the door at 2 a.m.
Which is very common now.
Right. They are actively generating and storing biometric templates. But they probably aren't spending millions of dollars on state-of-the-art cybersecurity. So if a threat actor breaches the gym and steals those templates, they now have the mathematical representation of my finger.
And the real danger there is cross-system portability.
Meaning they can use it somewhere else.
Exactly. If the gym's database stores those templates in plain text, or uses a really weak hashing algorithm, the attacker can just extract the raw feature vectors. They can use those vectors to reverse engineer a physical spoof, or they can attempt a template injection attack against a much more secure system.
Like my banking app. So it's like a domino effect. A breach at a local gym could theoretically give a hacker the key to your life savings.
Yes, which is why the industry is aggressively pushing toward concepts like homomorphic encryption and cancelable biometrics.
Okay, I really want to unpack homomorphic encryption because it sounds like literal black magic to me.
It kind of is.
Right. Like, the idea is that the server can perform a comparison on encrypted data without ever actually decrypting it into plain text. How do you compute something you can't even see?
Well, the classic analogy we use in the field is the watchmaker in a box.
Okay, I like analogies. Tell me.
Imagine a master watchmaker trying to build a complex timepiece, but all the gears and springs are inside a locked, completely opaque box.
So they can't see anything.
Right. But the box has these built-in sealed gloves, kind of like a hazmat suit. The watchmaker can manipulate the gears, assemble the springs, and complete the entire watch using those gloves without ever seeing the pieces or ever possessing the key to open the box.
That is wild.
Right. So in biometric terms, the server receives your encrypted live template from your phone. It performs the complex mathematical distance calculations against the encrypted stored reference, and it generates a match score. And it does all of this while the data remains completely in ciphertext.
So even if a hacker is literally sitting on the server, watching the memory processes in real time, all they see is mathematical garbage. The server never actually sees your face.
Precisely. It is incredibly secure.
But there has to be a catch. The computational overhead for that kind of lattice-based cryptography must be enormous, isn't it?
It is. It is incredibly resource intensive, which is exactly why it hasn't been universally adopted at the local level yet.
Which creates this totally fractured security landscape. Like, maybe the big banks and the federal border agencies use homomorphic encryption, but the provincial police departments and the local municipal portals definitely don't.
They usually don't have the budget or the hardware for it.
Which provides the perfect transition to the reality on the ground.
Right.
Because if your biometric template being stolen from a local gym is a personal disaster, what happens when the ultimate databases, the ones held by law enforcement, become the target?
That is the nightmare scenario.
Right. Because while Europol was warning about these vulnerabilities theoretically, a massive multi-year espionage campaign was quietly doing exactly this to Pakistani police servers.
And this is where we shift to the Sentinel Alone report. Because this wasn't theoretical. The telemetry they pulled, which was corroborated by the Hacker News, exposes a relentless cyber espionage campaign operating between February 2024 and April 2026.
A full 2 years. And the targets were super specific. They hit the Balochistan police, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa police, the Islamabad police, and the Punjab Safe Cities Authority.
Also known as the PSCA.
Right. Now, we usually hear about hackers going after, like, financial data or stealing intellectual property, blueprints for stealth bombers, stuff like that.
Yeah, traditional espionage.
Exactly. Why would advanced hacking groups spend over 2 years trying to get into the Balochistan police servers? What is the strategic value of a local police department's hotel registration data?
It's a great question. You have to look at how intelligence is actually synthesized by nation-states. Foreign intelligence services don't just rely on intercepted military communications.
Right. They need the ground truth.
Exactly. They need a granular, localized understanding of a nation's internal security picture. And provincial police departments possess the most highly centralized day-to-day data on a nation's stability.
What kind of data are we talking about?
They track internal militant movements, they have local deployment rosters, criminal case files, and they monitor critical infrastructure vulnerabilities.
And what about that tenant and hotel registration data? Because that feels like basically a real-time tracking system for human movement.
That's exactly what it is. In regions facing internal instability, local police mandate that landlords and hotels register all their occupants. And that data is tied directly to the national biometric ID databases.
Oh, wow.
So if a foreign intelligence service compromises that local system, they can map out the exact locations of specific individuals. They can track the movement of foreign nationals, and they can monitor exactly how local law enforcement responds to internal crises.
Which brings the geopolitical context into incredibly sharp focus here. Because the region is a powder keg of overlapping interests. Balochistan is a massive, resource-rich province that borders Iran and Afghanistan.
Very volatile.
Right. And it is the central hub for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. And there's been a significant history of militant violence targeting Chinese infrastructure projects and Chinese engineers in that specific area.
So if you look at it strictly from a signals intelligence perspective, a SIGINT perspective, a China-aligned threat actor has an overwhelming strategic imperative to compromise those local police networks.
They need to know what's happening on the ground to protect their assets.
Exactly. They need raw, unfiltered data on the security posture surrounding those economic projects. And they need to monitor the local militant threats that the Pakistani police are actively tracking.
Makes total sense. But Sentinel also observed India-aligned threat actors operating against the exact same targets, right?
Yes, they did.
And the motivation there is obviously rooted in the broader historical cross-border conflict. Accessing Pakistan's internal law enforcement data gives Indian intelligence really deep insight into how Pakistan manages domestic unrest, border security, and their counterterrorism operations.
What's fascinating here is the convergence. You have multiple distinct advanced persistent threats APTs from competing nations literally colliding inside the exact same municipal police networks.
It's like a crowded room of invisible spies.
It really is, and it completely proves Europol's core thesis. Identity and security data is the apex currency of modern intelligence.
So let's look at the digital arsenal they actually deployed to extract this currency, because this is where the code tells the story.
Let's unpack the malware.
Sentinel alone identified 4 primary malware families being used. We've got PlugX, ShadowPad, Cobalt Strike, and the Remco's RAT. These aren't script kiddie tools, are they?
Not at all. Let's break down the China Nexus tools first. You mentioned PlugX. PlugX is practically an institution in the cyber espionage world at this point.
Like an old, reliable tool.
Exactly. It's a highly modular remote access Trojan that has been the backbone of Chinese cyber operations for well over a decade. It is specifically designed for deep, long-term persistence in a network.
How does it stay hidden for so long?
It uses techniques like DLL sideloading.
Oh, I've heard of that. What is it exactly?
Basically, a legitimate, digitally signed, executable, a normal program is tricked by the attacker into loading a malicious dynamic link library into memory. It bypasses basic antivirus checks because the parent process running it appears entirely benign to the system.
Sneaky. But the report notes they also use ShadowPad, which is widely considered the evolutionary successor to Plug X, right?
Yeah, and ShadowPad is significantly more sophisticated. It operates on a heavily encrypted custom plugin framework.
How is it different from Plug X?
Well, when the initial payload executes, it only loads the absolute bare minimum code required to establish an outbound connection to the command and control server.
To C2 server.
Right. And then the C2 server quietly pushes specific encrypted modules directly into the system's memory.
Modules like what?
Like keyloggers, network scanners, file exfiltration tools, but it pushes them directly into memory without ever writing them to the hard drive.
So it's fileless malware.
Exactly. It leaves almost no forensic footprint on the disk for incident response teams to find. It's a nightmare for defenders.
And Sentinel tracked the victimology of these specific Plug X and ShadowPad deployments. Between February and December 2024, they weren't just hitting Pakistan. They were using this architecture against government and defense entities across South Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, and Southeast Europe.
It is a massive industrialized intelligence collection operation.
But the network forensics around the Cobalt strike activity is where the attribution really becomes undeniable, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because Cobalt strike is interesting. It's technically a legitimate adversary simulation tool. Red teams use it legally to test corporate defenses.
But pirated versions are everywhere on the dark web.
Right. And I know it relies heavily on what they call beacons, the actual payload that gets dropped onto the target machine. What makes a Cobalt strike beacon so incredibly hard for blue teams to catch?
It comes down to something called malleable C2 profiles.
Malleable meaning shape-shifting.
Exactly. The operators can configure the beacon to perfectly mimic legitimate network traffic. They can make the outbound communication look exactly like a standard HTTP request to a Google API. Or they can mask it as benign DNS queries. It just blends into the daily noise of a massive police network.
It's digital camouflage. But Sentinel found a specific thread that unraveled the whole thing.
They did. This is a great piece of threat hunting.
Yeah. So the IP address of the Cobalt Strike command and control server, which was 142.171.183.8 was communicating with the Pakistani police servers.
Yeah.
But threat hunters noticed that that exact same IP address was concurrently being used to target Tibetan Buddhist organizations in Taiwan.
That is a critical operational security failure by the threat actors.
A huge mistake.
Because Tibetans have been a primary historical target for Chinese cyber espionage for decades. The operational overlap, using the exact same C2 infrastructure to attack a police department in Islamabad and a religious organization in Taipei, sends the behavioral profile of a China Nexus operator.
They basically reused their digital getaway car.
Exactly. It tied the two campaigns together beautifully.
All right, now let's look at the India Nexus activity. The report highlights the deployment of the REMCO's RAT. Now, REMCO's is a commercial remote administration tool, but it gets heavily weaponized. And Sentinel attributes this specific campaign to a threat group known as Mysterious Element.
Right. They're also tracked as APTC-08 or TAG-179 by different security vendors.
What's their MO?
The telemetry shows significant tactical overlaps with other known India-aligned groups, like Sidewinder and Bitter. They specialize in highly targeted spear phishing and social engineering to establish their initial foothold.
And the social engineering they used here was brilliantly malicious. They didn't just send a generic, like, click here to reset your password email.
Oh, no, it was much more sophisticated.
They used a highly specific decoy document purporting to be a government operational plan for the repatriation of illegal foreigners. And it explicitly mentioned Afghan citizen cardholders.
This requires deep contextual intelligence. The attackers knew that Pakistan was actively engaged in a highly publicized and very controversial policy of deporting undocumented Afghan nationals at the time.
Right.
They knew that local police administrators would be expecting internal memos and operational directives regarding this exact issue.
It leverages the urgency of their daily jobs. Like, a police administrator receives a document formatted perfectly, like an internal government memo about Afghan repatriation. They open it, and the document exploits an unpatched vulnerability in Microsoft. WordSentinel alone thinks it was likely an equation editor exploit, and it silently drops the REMCO's RAT into the background.
And once REMCO's is established, it employs process hollowing.
Process hollowing. Sounds violent.
It kind of is, digitally speaking. It starts a legitimate Windows process like svcoast.exe, then it suspends that process, unmaps the legitimate code from memory, and injects the malicious remco's payload into that empty memory space.
So it wears the legitimate process like a skin suit.
Yes, the operating system looks at it and thinks it's running a normal background service, but it's actually running an active surveillance implant.
The technical sophistication of these backdoors is just incredible.
Yeah.
But honestly, what struck me the most about this entire deep dive wasn't the backdoors. It was the specific compromise of the Balochistan Police CMS portal.
Oh, yeah, that is the most concerning part of the entire report.
Because this wasn't just a technical exploit. This was the literal weaponization of public trust.
It represents a fundamental escalation in how these groups operate.
Let's break down the mechanics of this because it's devious.
Yeah.
The CMS is the complaint management system. It's a public-facing web portal designed for everyday citizens to register crimes, track police response times, and hold the department accountable.
It's a transparency tool.
Exactly. And the China Nexus threat actor managed to compromise the web server hosting this portal and uploaded 2 distinct malware variants directly to it.
They turned the portal into a watering hole attack.
Okay, what were the variants?
The first variant they dropped was a stager written in Rust, which they named cmsplugin.exe.
Now, I'm assuming they chose Rust because its memory management structures and its lack of a traditional runtime completely break older antivirus heuristics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes reverse engineering incredibly frustrating for analysts.
Precisely. Rust binaries are complex and heavily optimized, which obscures the malicious logic. This stager really had one job: establish a connection to an external IP address, which was 193.42.25.65, and download the secondary payload.
But they had to get the user to actually execute it.
Right. And to do that, the stager utilized a really basic but highly effective UI trick. When someone ran it, it simply displayed a little Windows message box that said, "Update complete, please refresh the page."
It perfectly mimics the mundane friction of enterprise software.
Yes.
A police officer or a clerk logs into the portal. A prompt tells them to run the CMS plugin update. They run it, see the completion message, and just go about their day, completely unaware they just executed a network beacon.
It's brilliant social engineering. But the second variant was even more insidious. It was a .NET executable, but the attackers explicitly named the file 360safe.exe.
Which is the exact name of the legitimate binary for Kihu 360 Total Security, right?
Yes, which is a very popular antivirus suite used across Asia.
It's camouflaging the malware as the very tool designed to stop it.
It is. And when a user executes this fake antivirus file, the .NET code utilizes a technique called reflective assembly loading.
Okay, talk me through that.
Instead of dropping an executable onto the hard drive where it can be scanned by actual antivirus software, the malware decrypts a massive string of base 64 encoded text stored within its own code.
Like a hidden message.
Exactly. And this text translates into a secondary .NET assembly, an asyncrat client, which is then loaded directly into the active memory of the application domain.
So it completely bypasses the anti-malware scan interface, or AMSI, because the malicious code never touches the disk. It only exists in the volatile memory of the system.
Yep. An asyncrat gives the attackers total remote desktop control. It gives them keylogging and the ability to exfiltrate the databases connected to the CMS portal.
Let's put this in perspective for the listener. It's like the hackers didn't just quietly break into the back window of the police station to rifle through the filing cabinets.
No, not at all.
They broke in, set up a fake front desk right in the lobby, and started handing out poison pens to anyone, whether that's a police officer, an administrator, or an everyday citizen, who walked through the front door to report a crime.
That analogy captures the exact mechanism of the damage perfectly. By compromising a portal that sits at the intersection of law enforcement and the public, the threat actor vastly extended their operational reach.
They cast a huge net.
They aren't just targeting the police internal network anymore. They're potentially infecting the personal devices of everyday citizens interacting with the state.
And that is the true casualty here. They took a mechanism designed for transparency and turned it into a massive delivery vehicle for an advanced, persistent threat.
It's devastating.
Because if a citizen realizes that downloading a simple form from the official police portal infects their home computer with a state-sponsored remote access Trojan, the entire social contract begins to fracture. The damage to public trust in digital governance is just catastrophic.
Which brings us full circle right back to Europol's mandate. The entire reason law enforcement agencies are sounding the alarm about presentation attacks at the sensor level and warning about the cryptographic failures of biometric data at rest. It's because identity infrastructure is the bedrock of a functioning modern society.
If the systems that verify who we are collapse, everything built on top of them collapses.
And we are rapidly approaching an era defined by quantum computing. Europol explicitly warns in their report that as quantum capabilities mature, traditional public key cryptography is going to fail.
Like the algorithms that secure our current passwords and encrypted communications, RSA.
Exactly. They will be trivially broken by quantum algorithms, specifically things like Shor's algorithm.
Meaning passwords will literally become obsolete. The mathematics will force us to rely entirely on biometrics.
We will have no choice. We will have to use our physical biology as our only cryptographic key. But as we've seen today, if that biological data is stolen from a weak local database, it can be mathematically replicated.
Right, 3D printed fingers and morphed faces.
And if the central governmental databases designed to secure that data are actively being hollowed out by foreign intelligence services, the integrity of the entire system is nullified.
It demands a total architectural rethink. We can't just build better scanners at the door. We have to secure the entire life cycle of the data.
We do. It requires hardware liveness detection that absolutely cannot be bypassed at the OS level. It requires universal adoption of homomorphic encryption for template matching, despite the overhead.
And it requires network defenses capable of detecting fileless, memory-resident implants like ShadowPad and Cobalt Strike before they establish persistence in municipal infrastructure.
It's a massive challenge.
Synthesizing everything we've torn apart today, we started by looking at the physical vulnerabilities of our own bodies. The realization that a photograph of a smudged screen can be translated into a 3D printed replica of your fingerprint.
We explored how algorithmic bias creates structural weaknesses for underrepresented demographics and how those mathematical features can be stolen from a gym and injected across different platforms.
We then traced that vulnerability all the way up to the macro level, dissecting a massive multi-year cyber espionage campaign where advanced hacking groups from competing nations converged on the exact same local police databases in Pakistan.
We analyze how they used custom stagers, reflective memory loading, and deeply contextual social engineering to siphon off the granular identity data of an entire region.
They hijacked the mechanisms of public safety and turned them into intelligence traps. It is a terrifying convergence of physical insecurity and digital warfare.
It is the new reality.
And it leaves us with one final, lingering question to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We've spent the last hour dissecting the incredible lengths systems go to verify who we are. But think about this. If our unchangeable physical traits can be easily modeled from a photograph, and the highly secure government databases holding our digital identities can be quietly controlled by foreign powers using fileless malware for years at a time, you have to ask yourself, in the near future, when a digital system asks you to prove you are who you say you are, how will you actually know who you are proving it to?